What's up, guys, and welcome to a special Saturday edition of Player Pool. Going to be looking at the two-game slate for Saturday, two games with playoff implications, and I'm going to break down the best plays right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Player Pool. Looking at a special Saturday edition of this episode, going to have two playoff games, or two games with playoff implications in this episode, and it should be a good one with lots of opportunity for us to get different. There's going to be a few players that'll be very popular. They have bonus incentives in this one. We got a couple receivers who are looking at 1,000 yards and should be targeted a decent amount in this game. So before we do anything, make sure to hit the like button, get me to 30 likes so that I can put out my favorite plays in the comment section. Make sure to hit subscribe. I'm about 15 short of 1,500. I want to get to 1,600 by the end of week 18. And you're going to want to hit subscribe to get alerts for when my shows and other content go up. Going to be putting out a lot of content during the playoffs and a lot of good content. Hopefully, we've been on a roll here lately, hitting on showdown, building a showdown winner on the show. Had a lot of success with Ricky Pearsall last week and had a 53-1 pick'em hit on underdog. So been just rolling in picks recently, and we're going to get into this two-game slate here, and this is going to be an interesting slate. There's a lot of content companies have not been putting out very decent Week 18 content, which is great for us if we don't really rely on other places or look at much. I was taking a look this week to kind of get an idea of what scenarios were happening for different players and different teams and everything. And I really just could not find any good content. So we could be in a good situation here on this show because we don't really look at too much content usually before we break these games down. So this is going to be a good situation. We got Cleveland versus Baltimore, and we got Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh. The Cleveland-Baltimore game is a total of 42.5 points, and we got Baltimore as 17.5-point favorites against this crappy Cleveland team that is clearly tanking, having benched Jameson Winston for these scrubby backups. And in the Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game, we got a 48.5-point total with Cincinnati as 2.5-point favorites in this one. Should be an interesting game there, too. Cincinnati needs to win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive. They need to win this game, and they need, the Dolphins to lose, and they need the Broncos to lose as well. So they need a lot to get into the playoffs, but it's going to start with winning against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. And on the other side, we got the Cleveland-Baltimore game where Baltimore is battling Pittsburgh for first place in the NFC North. So if Baltimore ends up beating Cleveland, which they're likely to do, then Pittsburgh not necessarily going to need to go hard in this one against Cincy, because I think their playoff situation will be sorted out at that point. So it should be an interesting scenario with these two games. Let's take a look here at a playoff simulator just to get a better idea of what this situation is going to be playing out for where Pittsburgh could potentially end up as their seeding if they end up losing or winning this game here. I've been doing a best ball show, playoff best ball, where I've been breaking down these playoff games and trying to figure out who's going to be the best teams for us to target in best ball, playoff best ball. And there's a Pro Football Network simulator, which which I've liked using the most, which I'm calling up here. It's just taking a second. But this simulator is my favorite one, and not only in but not only in Week 18, but in the playoffs in general, advancing teams to the Super Bowl. So let's say Baltimore wins this one. Let's say the Bengals win this one. Let's say we got Atlanta. Let's go with Washington over Dallas. I don't think that game has any significance. Let's go with Green Bay over Chicago. Let's go. This one doesn't matter. Buffalo versus the Patriots doesn't matter either. The Eagles game doesn't matter. Tampa Bay versus New Orleans. Tampa Bay needs to win to get in the playoffs, and they need Atlanta to, or they need Atlanta to lose. We got Houston versus Tennessee. Let's give that one to Houston. That'll help us sort out these seedings too. We got San Francisco versus Arizona. Let's go with Arizona. Denver versus Cincy, Denver. And then we got Miami versus the Jets. Let's go with Miami in that one. Let's go with the Chargers. And let's go with the Rams. And let's go with Detroit at home in this one against a division rival. So if this scenario plays out where the Ravens win and Pittsburgh loses, Pittsburgh's going to be facing off against the Ravens in round one of the playoffs. And that, not a bad situation for Pittsburgh, despite what it might look like. Pittsburgh has dominated Lamar Jackson. They play each other, Jackson, for most of those games. So Pittsburgh, I don't really think it's going to affect them too badly if they end up against Pittsburgh, end up against Baltimore in that first round. Now, if we go to Pittsburgh winning, if Pittsburgh wins, then they'll be facing off against Houston instead, and the Chargers would be facing off against the Ravens, and we'd have a Harbaugh situation. So Pittsburgh, I think they would rather win and face Houston, obviously, but if they lose and have to face Baltimore, it's not going to make that big of a deal. So it's a seeding issue here for Pittsburgh this week on what their incentive is going to be to win. Meanwhile, like I said, with Cincy, they need to win. And even if they win, like right now, Denver is slotted to make it to the playoffs. If Denver loses to Kansas City, and the Miami loses as well, then it's going to be the Bengals in the playoffs. So you can kind of see that situation out here. Miami loses to the Jets. The Bengals beat Pittsburgh, and the Broncos end up losing. So that's what Cincy needs in order to advance to the playoffs. So they need a lot to happen for them, but it starts with a win against Pittsburgh. So you can bet that Cincinnati's not going to be holding back in this one, especially potentially T. Higgins' last game in Cincinnati or last game with Cincinnati, and Joe Burrow. He's been saying a lot of positive stuff about T. Higgins in the press lately, and these guys are all pretty tight. So nobody wants to see T. Higgins go. But, what better way to send him off with a nice, huge game against Pittsburgh in the final week of the season when he needs 100 yards to get that $1,000 bonus incentive or 1,000-yard bonus incentive. So T. Higgins has something to play for. Let's go ahead and build this lineup. I do think that Joe Burrow will probably be the most popular player on the slate. Let me take a look see if we got any type of ownership. Like I said, like these other sites have been very, very sluggish with putting out any type of Week 18 content, and that's going to be an edge if you don't rely on other sites for their stuff. But let's take a look and see if I can get a Saturday 2-game slate ownership idea. All right, so quarterback in this slate, we're looking at Russell Wilson as the highest owned quarterback. Now, if Baltimore wins and the Steelers are not doing well in this game, like I just don't see Russell Wilson like necessarily like playing full like throughout this game. If Cincy comes out and gets a nice big lead in this one, at what point is Pittsburgh going to say, okay, we got to get our starters ready for the playoffs. We can't pull this one out. And Russell Wilson at a 35% ownership, a little surprising to me. I'm seeing Lamar Jackson as the number 2. Same situation. They could be stomping Cleveland, and Lamar Jackson, we don't necessarily see a full game out of him. I see Joe Burrow as the 3rd highest owned, which is kind of shocking to me. But like I'll roll with that. Joe Burrow's obviously my favorite play of the night. So our favorite quarterback play of the night. So let's put Joe Burrow in that captain. Like I said, T. Higgins has the incentives this week. He's also trying to get Jamar Chase to a triple crown situation. As far as how much points the defense is giving up from the Pittsburgh side, they're giving up 26 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. They're allowing a 43% target share to wideouts. So that's going to be in T. Higgins' advantage. Jamar Chase runs a decent amount of his routes in the slot, where Pittsburgh is much stronger. They're only allowing 8.2 DraftKings points to the slot. But obviously, it's Jamar Chase, and we're not going to be really shying away from a matchup with him. But Jamar Chase does have the worst of the matchups. Cincinnati, Joe Burrow also does not have a very good matchup against quarterbacks with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's only allowing 14.9 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. But the way Joe Burrow's been playing, he's familiar with Pittsburgh anyways. They play each other twice a year. So it's not really a situation, I don't think, to fear for Joe Burrow. Last game they played, the result was 44-38. Pittsburgh won that game. Joe Burrow put up 25 DraftKings points in that one. So I do like Joe Burrow to Higgins. We could put Chase in this one too, just to complete the double stack. You could do different variations if you want to double stack him. Joe Burrow's been throwing 3 touchdowns a game for how many games straight now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 straight games he's thrown 3+ touchdowns. So take your pick on guys that you think is going to get the touchdown. Could be Higgins. It could be Gesicki. Pittsburgh has also been weak against the tight end position. They've been giving up 12.9 DraftKings points a game to tight end. So you could put Gesicki in there potentially. As far as Gesicki's ownership compared to some of these other tight ends, Gesicki is looking at 17.5. Actually, scratch that. He's looking at a 30.9% ownership in this one. So we got decision point there with Gesicki. I do like Freiermuth on the other side of this game better. Cincinnati's been one of the worst defenses in the league against tight end. So I love using Freiermuth this week as a potential run back option. He's a heat seeker in my underdog video. So you're going to want to check that out. And he can juice up our return on that to 66 times our money. Got a nice 53 times our money return on the San Francisco game the other day. So make sure to check that out. Use the promo code SEEK, SEEK, to sign up for an account over on Underdog. They're going to match you up to they're going to match you a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. So you want to do that and take advantage of that. You want to get that money in there anyways, because it's playoff best ball season, and it's probably one of the most fun DFS games that's out there right now. So check that out. So let's put Chase in this one too. We're running it back with Freiermuth. For running backs, let's look into let's see. No one really stands out on the Baltimore-Cleveland side as far as a matchup. Cleveland's only allowing 19 DraftKings points a game. Baltimore is allowing 20.4 DraftKings points a game. But if Baltimore takes a significant lead, then I could see them turning to a guy like Keaton Mitchell. Keaton Mitchell, we saw get some run last week with Justice Hill out. He had 11 rushing attempts for only 20 yards. But I believe it was He's only been back for a few weeks, but that was his first time getting any run, it looks like. But Keaton Mitchell was a stud last year. He was looking like he was going to be a really good player, but then I believe he tore his ACL, so we didn't see anything else out of him until last week. So let's get Keaton Mitchell in there, assuming that the Ravens are going to handle them. They're not going to want to run Derrick Henry too much if they're handling them. So Keaton Mitchell should get a decent amount of run in this one, I would project. If we're looking at defenses, Browns defense, don't like them. Steelers defense, Bengals defense, and Ravens defense are who I'd consider. With this being a Joe Burrow stack, I'd probably lean more towards the Ravens. 3,500 there. It's going to leave us with 5K per guy. So let's go into our next running back situation here. Like I said, probably Pittsburgh is going to be the best next option at running back, and Jaylen Warren is pretty cheap, so let's get him in there for 5,800. Cincy, like I said, giving up 22.9 DraftKings points, and if Joe Burrow double stacks are going off, they're going to need to throw the ball to Warren a decent amount in this one. It's going to leave us with 4,600 per guy for our remaining wide receiver spots. And as I mentioned, like Pickens also has a salary incentive. He needs 65 yards to hit, he needs 100 yards to hit 1,000 yards. Higgins needs like 145 yards. So let's get Pickens in there too. Going to leave us with 2,700. So that's going to put us in a situation where we got to get one of these guys out of here. Let's get the Ravens D out. Let's just go with the Browns D. Let's go with, this is going to leave us with 4K. Let's look at some of these cheap options. I think I would lean cheap on the Ravens. I think the Ravens cheap guys are probably where I want to look at. You know what? I kind of like Rashad Bateman at 4,600. That's really cheap. Let's get Rashad Bateman in there. Going to make us shuffle things around a little bit here. Let's look at other receivers here. Let's see if there's any cheap Cleveland receivers. Thrash. I'm not really seeing anyone decent there. Tillman is on IR. He's not playing. Oh, Elijah Moore is only 3,800. So what's Baltimore doing against the slot receivers? They're giving up 12.1 DraftKings points a game to the slot. That's not too bad. You know what we could do here is we could take Chase out of that flex, get Bateman out of there. Let's put Chase. Let's get Jamar Chase into our wide receiver spot. Now let's look at flex. We got 4K in the flex. Let's see what that can get us. Let's see. Looking at guys like Josephus would be an option. Elijah Moore. There we go. Elijah Moore fits into our flex position. If you want to get Gesicki in there and add another guy on the Cincy side, he'd be an option. Aguilar is another option. One of these cheap guys could be the key that we need to unlock to build the optimal lineup here. So I think one of these cheap options. There's a lot of different options too. Mike Williams is only 3,300. So we got all sorts of good guys. Let's put Williams in there. And let's look at what that does for our defense. We get our defense up to Steelers in that case. Ultimately, I'd love to get up to that 20, that Baltimore defense. Let's see if we can even do that. Is there any cheap tight ends or something in that flex spot? Darnell Washington. Okay, so against this terrible Cincinnati defense, Darnell Washington could sneak in for some sort of a touchdown, or especially if they end up, not playing their starters all the way through. Darnell Washington would be in a really good spot in that situation. If we wanted to get Freiermuth out of that tight end position and put in Washington instead, that would leave us with 4,100, and that would get us like options like Calvin Austin, guys like Calvin Austin, Josephus, the guys that we mentioned before, Freiermuth, stuff like that. I mean, you could go 2 Pittsburgh tight ends would definitely differentiate you from the field in this one. That would be an interesting way to play this. Like I said, the best matchup potentially on the slate, apart from Cincinnati's wide receivers against Pittsburgh's defense, is going to be that Pittsburgh's tight ends against Cincinnati's defense. They're giving up 17 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. And really, the next closest one to that is Indy, which is giving up 16 DraftKings points. So Cincy is just really bad against the tight end position. So 2 tight ends from the same team would be interesting. If we didn't want to go there, though, we could get Likely in there for pretty cheap. Likely's only 3,300, and that would leave us with 3,300 in the flex, which puts us in the range of Mike Williams, Van Jefferson, 2 guys that could easily score a touchdown in this one against the Cincinnati defense. And then Skowronek was getting a decent amount of run before he got hurt a couple weeks ago. He got targeted twice, and then he came out of the game. So Skowronek would be interesting at 3K. And then from there, there's not really much else to look at. So there's a few different options there. If you wanted to go from Ravens to Bengals, let's say, 3,800 is what it would leave us in our flex. But if we want to switch that back to Freiermuth, leaves us with 3,200. In that situation, 3,200, we got options like Van Jefferson, Wallace, stuff like that. Like Wallace might actually be a good play in this one if their starters end up going out a little bit early. Wallace at 3,100 would be interesting. It could give him some more run. You got to think from Baltimore's perspective. If they take a big lead in this game, they're going to want to put their starters on the bench. The main game that we want to focus on is going to be Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. I think that's going to be the most predictable as far as like where opportunities are going to go or need to go. And I think that with the Baltimore-Cleveland game, there's a little bit of uncertainty is going to be on the Cleveland side. Really, I think I've heard that both their quarterbacks are going to be starting or not starting, but playing in this one. So that's Thompson Robinson and Bailey Zappi. So I don't know if they're splitting the position this week. Jameis Winston, really the only competent quarterback that they have, but they're clearly in tank mode because Jameis Winston has been on the bench for a few weeks. He's the only one that gives them a legitimate shot at winning games, and they're not using them. They're using his interceptions as an excuse, which, sure, like the interceptions are not a good thing, but at the same time, Jameis Winston gives them the most realistic chance of winning with that crappy team. Lamar Jackson at 8K, very expensive. He could put up a decent amount of points in the first half of this game, put them in a good lead. He could get a full game's worth of points and a half against Cleveland potentially. against Cleveland earlier this year. Let's see, when Cleveland wasn't incentivized to lose, Cleveland beat them 29-24 back in week 8. So Cleveland's already beat them once this season, but I don't think that Baltimore's going to have any trouble winning this one this week. Could be wrong on that, though. Cleveland could show up, but their quarterbacks, like without Jameis Winston at the quarterback, I just don't see them having a real shot at putting up a fight in this one. If you did think so, Zappy might be the way to go. Thompson, Robinson, you can see he's played a few games already, and he's at a 3.7 average fantasy points a game. So, I mean, that kind of shows you how well he's been doing. But just to kind of recap, I like Joe Burrow. I like the Burrow stacks. I like the Higgins and Chase stacks. I think you can go double stack on Burrow. If you don't want to use Chase, or you don't want to use Higgins, you could add Freiermuth in there. I mean, Gesicki in there instead, or Josephus, any of those dudes. And then the running back situation, the expensive running backs. Chase Brown, we don't know how much he's going to play. He sprained his ankle or hurt his ankle in the last game he played. Derrick Henry, don't know if he's going to even play the full game. And then he's got a tough Cleveland run defense on top of that. They're only giving up 19 DraftKings points a game. Baltimore's only giving up 20 DraftKings points a game, and Pittsburgh is only giving up 20.8 DraftKings points a game. So really, Pittsburgh's running backs are the only ones that have a decent enough matchup to target. So the running backs, I think you can go cheap at running back this week, and I don't mind going a guy like Keaton Mitchell or maybe even Justice Hill. But I do think that Keaton Mitchell is the guy that's going to get probably a decent amount of run in this game. We saw it last week when he had 11 rushing attempts. I would not be surprised to see something similar this week. And Mitchell has shown explosive upside in the past, and I do think that Mitchell could be a heat seeker for us tonight. I think that he could potentially have a decent game back for this week. But he's coming off a twice. He's been off of injured reserve for a few weeks now. He got his first run last week, and he didn't really do much with it. But he does have potential this week. Okay, so if we want to go in a different direction, let's say we want to put Russell Wilson in the quarterback position. We got Wilson to Pickens and Freiermuth. It's an easy swap there, and it's going to give us 5,400. We can see why Russell Wilson is the highest owned quarterback on the slate. It opens things up a lot. In that flex spot, that's going to give us options like if we wanted to, I wouldn't go Harris and Warren because that's going to be anti-correlation with Russell Wilson. I would go with Bateman, I think, in that situation. Bateman against this Cleveland defense that's giving up, let's see, they're only giving up 17.1 DraftKings points a game to wideouts over the last 4 games, but they're giving up 47.2% of the targets against Baltimore is going to the wideouts. Remember them early in the season. They were really bad against wideouts, and they hold the season as far as the season long percentage against. They are the highest targeted secondary for wideouts in the league. So that's going to put Rashad Bateman definitely in play in this one. And I don't have enough Rashad Bateman in playoff best ball either, because if Baltimore and Pittsburgh end up facing each other in the first round of these playoffs, then it's going to be a situation where Bateman has the best wideout matchup in the playoffs in that first round, and at least for the last 4 weeks. And Bateman can definitely do some damage in that situation. So, all right, guys, that's enough for this episode. Make sure to check me out tomorrow. I'm going to be putting out a Sunday episode with a lot of different scenarios and everything like that. People say it's difficult to play DFS in week 18. I found it not to be that difficult as long as you're on top of incentives and playoff scenarios and stuff like that. If you do that, if you've been playing playoff best ball for the last few weeks, then you're very aware of, the playoff situation and what teams need, because you've been, playing those scenarios as you've been drafting these teams for the last couple weeks. So definitely an advantage to get in on that game. So make sure to open up an underdog account, use the promo code SEEK. They're going to match you up to $1,000 on a 50% deposit match. So make sure to check that out. Make sure to hit the like button on this video. Get me to 30 likes so I put my favorite plays in the comment section as we get closer to lock. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. I only need 15 more to hit 1,500 subscribers. And I want to get to 1,600 by the end of week 11 or week 18. So make sure to do that. And I will see you guys later on.